Well, good morning. That was a little sad. Good morning. You guys should have no excuse. It's already 11 o'clock, so you're awake now. I know it. So, I was told that I need to keep this sermon really short so that you guys can go and get lunch right after. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm not going to give you guys any promises, but I'll do my best. I was having the hardest time trying to figure out what am I going to speak on for graduation Sunday. And I was thinking I could always stick with the VeggieTales theme, because that was what I did a little bit last year. But I was like, if I do that, then Mark might not let me preach again. And so I was like, okay, I'll go with a different theme. And you guys are okay to laugh if you think something is funny. I want to let you know that I will be okay if you laugh at me. Like, I will still be okay as long as I know that you're listening a little bit. And so I didn't go with the VeggieTales theme. I cut that out. But I just did want to mention VeggieTales just to see if anybody would laugh, and they didn't. So I switched it up, and I'm sticking with the book of Hebrews. And so I want you guys to go ahead and grab the Bible that's in front of you, and go ahead and turn to the book. I'm not going to go that far anymore. Turn to the book of Hebrews, Hebrews 12. It is page 1107. And so while you guys are turning there, I'm just going to grab a drink of water. Okay, so I don't hear as many pages flipping, so I guess most of you guys are probably there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just read through Hebrews 1 and 2, and then I'm going to go back, and then I'll break it down a little bit after that. So I'll go ahead and read through it, and then we'll break it down. So Hebrews 12, 1 and 2. Therefore, since we have such a great cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily ensnares us. Let us run with endurance the race that lies before us, keeping our eyes on Jesus, the source and perfecter of our faith, who, for the joy that lay before him, endured the cross and despised the shame and sat down at the right hand of God's throne. So the analogy that's given here is the idea of a race. So show of hands, I like to do show of hands to get you guys a little more active. Who has ever run a race? Has anyone? A handful of people. Okay, a little bit less than I thought, but it's okay. You guys get the idea. Running a race is not the easiest thing to do. It's not. I've only run like a couple, but if any of you guys have ever played sports, you know that it's difficult and it's not always a fun thing, but that's the analogy that's being used here, is like it's the idea of running a race. And so the very first word that is mentioned in verse 1, 12:1, is therefore. And it was always taught in seminary and in undergrad, is when you see that word, you have to see what the therefore is there for. I'll let that sink in. Just think about it. Figure out what the therefore is actually there for. You have to go back. You have to go back and see what was said and why he's saying therefore. Because therefore is just kind of that bridge. It's the bridge, okay, so I just talked about this, now I want to talk about this in context of what was being said. So for all of you Hebrews fans in the book of Hebrews, which I know there is many because I've been talking about it so much, is Hebrews 11 is being considered the Hall of Faith. It's just a fun little play on words from the Hall of Fame, but instead it's called the Hall of Faith. And so Hebrews 11 goes through the story of different people in the Old Testament. People like Moses and Noah and Abraham and Isaac, Jacob. The list goes on. And these are people who have run their race. They're people who have kept the faith, and finished strong. And so a lot of people like to take this idea of cloud of witnesses as the people that are just the ones who are surrounding us right now. But in reality, it's that, but then some. And he's talking about this cloud of witnesses surrounding us from the Old Testament. You see these people who by faith have finished their race, who by faith have been able to stay strong and pursue God. And so because of that, you need to lay aside every weight and sin that entangles you. And so one thing that I really like about what's mentioned here is it's not just sin. Like, sin isn't the only thing that he says you need to lay aside. Every weight that entangles you, every weight and sin. that entangles you. And so to kind of picture this a little bit better, I'll go back to the race analogy. Like if I was told to go run a race right now, like I would not put on a heavy rain jacket. Like I would get overheated. Like that's not something I do. Is a rain jacket necessarily bad when you're running? Like no, if it's pouring down rain, like you'll probably want a rain jacket. And if it's freezing cold, like you'll probably want a jacket. But for today, where I'm at right now, a rain jacket in my race probably isn't a good thing. I get overheated, I won't make it very well. And so we have to lay aside those weights that are not going to help us run, that are going to cause us more pain than help. And so you don't just ask the question, is it a sin? You have to ask the question, is it going to help me run? You take a look at the things in your life, and you really have to figure out, is this going to help me in my race? And so this is a really tough question to ask because everybody's different. Like I can't sit up here and say like, don't do this, don't do that. You can't do that. You can't do this. Everybody's going to be they're in a different spot in their race. Like everybody's going through different things. Like for somebody who's like, go back to the analogy, like they need that rain jacket because they're in a storm, but other people might be in the sunshine. So it's just different for everybody what's going to slow them down in their race. And so I can't sit up here and tell you, just don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, and you'll be fine. Like I can't do that. I have to ask you to take a look into your own self and figure out what you're doing in your own life that's helping you run or that's slowing you down. I can't do it for you. So that's that first section. And the next section, run with endurance. Endurance is tough. For those 5 people that raised their hands that have run a race, you know that you need to have at least a little bit of endurance. And for everyone else who thought about raising their hands and were kind of like, maybe, like you at least have an idea that endurance has to be a part of a race. And endurance is tough and it doesn't come easy. Maybe if you haven't run a race, you've worked out or you've played a sport and you know a little bit of how muscles work, and they become stronger when they're torn down a little bit, and then they rebuild, they heal, and they come back stronger. And so that is how endurance is built. And so I want to go ahead and look back towards the great cloud of witnesses that is mentioned in Hebrews 11. And I want to talk about a couple of them and some of the ways that their endurance was built up. So the first one of my favorites, of course, is Moses. So say it with me, Moses. Say it one more time, Moses. I just like hearing Moses, it's fun. So you can laugh at that, it's okay. So Moses, he did an amazing job leading the people of Israel. He was the main leader when they were coming out of the Exodus, but right before he died, he wasn't allowed to enter into the promised land. He was not allowed. He made a mistake earlier in his career, and God said, okay, you're not allowed in the promised land. But right before he died, God allowed him to go up onto a mountain and show him the promised land. So he's able to come up there and see it. Oh, beautiful. Nope, but not you. You don't get to go. But you can see it, but you don't get to go. Like, just think of how difficult that must be. Like Moses, like he worked so hard. He traveled. 40 years in the wilderness. You can see it, but you don't get to go. That must have been very difficult. And then you see Joseph, who was betrayed by his family. His brothers betrayed him just because they didn't like him. He was probably a little too arrogant. And so it's like, okay, we'll just get rid of you. We'll throw you in a pit. And that must have been fun. I don't know from experience. I've only fallen down a few times, but never been thrown in a pit. And so Joseph was thrown into a pit. He was thrown in jail just because people didn't like him. Just because people were upset that he was succeeding. He was just trying to be righteous, and he was punished for it. But God worked through that, and he was able to become second in command in Egypt. And then you see the life of Abraham, who was called out of his father's household to go to a land that I will show you. And to kind of put that in an analogy, be like, okay, let's go get lunch. I'll pay for it, but you just meet me there. And that's all I tell you. Like, you'd be a little like, okay, where are we going? Like, oh, you just meet me there. You're good. I'll pay for it. You don't have to worry about anything. You can get whatever you want. Pay for it. I'll even get you a little bit more so you can take it home with you. But just meet me there. Like, that's kind of what it would have been like for Abraham. Leave everything. Like, I'll take care of everything. You just have to go. And just listen to me, and you'll figure it out. And I'll tell you where to go. Like, that was very difficult, to leave the comfort of what he knew to go to the unknown. And so each one of these characters there is mentioned in the hall of faith. They each had difficulties. They each had trials and tribulations that they had to go through. And I heard it so much in seminary of people who would talk about these guys, and they wanted their faith. Like, they wanted the second in command. They wanted the thousands of people following him. They wanted to be called like just these great names, but they weren't willing to go through the trials and tribulations that made those men who they are. And so many times people say, like, I want that faith. Like, I want to do so much. Like, I want to be glorifying to God, but I don't want to go through all of those difficult things. And so, but that is what gave them the endurance to run that race, was to go through those difficult things. And I can almost hear a little voice inside a lot of you guys' heads. I can almost hear it, the little voice that's saying, that sounds like a lot of loss. You're telling me that I need to lay aside all of these weights, that I need to go through all of these trials and tribulations. That sounds like a lot of loss and not much gain. Like, that sounds very difficult. And the author knew that people were going to ask that question. The author knew like that question was going to come up. And that's answered in verse 2. Keeping our eyes on Jesus. Keeping our eyes on Jesus is the key. How many of you guys, show of hands, because I like to do show of hands, as you know, have ever tried to see who could hold their breath underwater the longest? Yeah. Show of hands over here? Okay, yeah. So most of us have tried to do it. And for those of you who have tried, like, you know it's so much easier when you can see that goal that you have to beat. If you're trying to just do it without seeing a timer, without seeing the person that you're going up against, it's so much more difficult because you don't know how much you have to go, how far you have to go. You just kind of do it. But when you're able to see that goal, when you're able to see that person right in front of you, it becomes much easier to keep pushing through, to keep fighting on. And that is what is mentioned here. The author says, keep your eyes on Jesus, who is at the right hand of God, who's in heaven right now. You need to see that finish line and be able to continue pushing through. I've said it so much in youth, and when I say so much, I mean like 3 times, because that's a lot to me right now. And so that to bring up the idea of what does heaven look like, and to get people thinking, like, tell me about heaven. Like, what does it look like to you? Like, because that's your end goal. Like, that's the finish line for you. And if you can't see that, if you can't tell me what heaven is going to be like, then you don't have that end goal in sight, and you're probably going to come up short. So you need to be able to at least think of a little bit of what it's going to be like in heaven. That's the end goal. That's the finish line. And so I really wanted to talk about this idea because this is a milestone for a lot of us. Graduation. We've run so much of our race already. We've reached this milestone of graduation. And I want to encourage you to keep running. Yes, you're going to have to lay aside some weights, lay aside some sins. You're going to have to experience some trials and tribulations. But you can keep running. You see that end goal, that finish line. And so, give me 1 second, I need to drink some water. And so we see all of these things. And in the moment, it feels like so much loss. It feels like I have to lay aside so much. I have to go through so much, and it's so difficult. But you remember Christ. You remember the end goal, and it becomes much easier. And so my challenge for everybody who's graduating, and also for those who are just running their race, to remember the finish line. Remember why you need to build up that endurance so you can finish. Because it's going to be tough out there. Like, life is not easy. We're never promised an easy life, but we are promised that finish line. So, if you have never started that race, or maybe you're not a member of this church and you want to have people to come alongside you in this race as well, we're going to have a time of invitation where we will stand a little bit, and then we will sing, and that'll be a time to come forward and either talk to Mark or me. And this will be just a time for you guys to reflect and see, what weights do I need to lay aside? How can I build my endurance to continue running towards that finish line? And even if you just want somebody to talk to about it, you can as well. And so, I lost my bulletin, so I don't remember the hymn number. 62 was told from the whispering voices behind me. So if you will stand and sing hymn